EQAC. Yeah, I think, being a solar advocate these days is kind of just, it's an exercise in optimism over reality. So I've been doing this for 10 years, and we seem to be fighting the same battles over and over. It gets old. Are you going to run that? Okay, great. And hey, can I take this off? Is that all right? And so I can actually see what I'm talking to. Because so I need this because the General Assembly's in session and things have already changed from when I put these slides together on Tuesday. The General Assembly has this rapid fire approach, and if you don't keep your eyes on it all the time, you'll find your bills are gone and something else has come and things have changed and something you thought you supported is now horrible, or vice versa. So it's a very exciting and very fast-paced. So if you would start. So we have been trying for a long time to get improvements in solar policy in Virginia. Last year, the utilities got everything they wanted and more. In this, you've heard about the grid mod bill, I think, in which they were basically allowed to keep a lot of over earnings and basically spend the money on things they wanted that the regulators at the State Corporation Commission hadn't been letting them spend money on. Well, part of what they got was putting utility solar projects in the public interest, which smoothing the way for regulators so that they could build 5,500 megawatts of solar. Now that's not a huge amount in the grand scheme of things. It's about the same output as one of their very large natural gas power plants, but it's a lot of solar for Virginia, and we were very encouraged by that. But a lot of legislators sort of thought, well, now we've done solar, but it did nothing for customer-owned solar, and there is a huge market for solar on rooftops and on landfills and on empty lots that could serve customers that the utilities don't make money from, and so it's not in their interest. But we're trying to get barriers removed so that we can put up much more than that, much more than just the utility scale things. So this idea originally came from somebody who works with the City of Falls Church on their energy, and then we talked to solar developers, solar installers, solar customers, and local governments. And I gotta say, Fairfax County has been terrific. We got feedback from the lawyers, from staff. Really, this became a bill that is as much Fairfax County's bill as it is the solar communities and developers bill. There are a bunch of other bills in the General Assembly that also address solar, and I will touch on those briefly. There are people trying to do bits and pieces of the same thing. And then there is a bill that was negotiated by the utilities and the solar industry with some input from others, but critically not from solar customers. And so it's an okay bill, but if the cat negotiates with the mice, what are the mice going to get? And that's been the problem, is that what's come out of it is not bad, but it isn't what we want. Okay, next one. So everything, if you're going to do solar on your house or solar on your business or solar at your schools, you need net metering, which basically means that at the times of the day when you've got excess supply of electricity from your solar panels, the excess goes onto the grid and you get a one-for-one credit that you can draw on later. That is the only support for solar that we get from the state, is the right to do that and be credited without penalty. You're not really selling power back to the grid. Typically you don't get paid for it, but it makes it economical because now you are saving money on your energy bills the whole day long. If you don't have that, there's really no economic case for solar. It makes it much, much harder for people to do private investments, hard to get loans, because you won't make your money back. Unfortunately, the utilities don't like it, and there are a whole number of barriers in the law that make it difficult to do anything beyond really a single-family home or a business just doing its own solar and less amount than they're using. There's one of these is that is this cap on the total amount of net metered solar in the state. When it hits 1% of a utility's peak demand, it gets cut off. And that is, in Dominion territory, not a threat yet, because Dominion's very large, but in some of the smaller cooperatives and municipal utilities, they're already running up against that cap, and so we're at an urgent point. It's not just a matter of we'd like to get rid of a lot of barriers, it's that the industry will be harmed if we don't get some fixes this year. Next one, please. Utilities don't like net metering in large part because it cuts into their sales of electricity, and their business model is based on ever-increasing sales of electricity. And so if customers can generate their own electricity, that's bad for the utilities' bottom line. But what you'll hear from the utilities is that it means that solar customers aren't paying their fair share of the costs of keeping up the grid. Now, if you have solar, you do have to pay that basic monthly fee, so you are paying what it costs the utility to connect you. But they do have a fair amount of fixed costs, and that's what they're looking at. And that's what we hear, especially from the cooperatives, is, oh, we have all these fixed costs, and so if you're not paying it, somebody else is. Of course, in the case of Dominion, they've got hundreds of millions of dollars of retained earnings, so nobody is having to subsidize anybody else. The utility is simply keeping the extra money. So it's a really hard thing for them to prove that they're losing anything here. But there's a lot of things that don't go into a utility calculation. The public benefits of solar in terms of carbon reductions and pollution reductions and resiliency, and the fact that it's better for the grid if you've got generation all over the place instead of at a few central locations. Those things don't go into the utilities' profit calculus, but they do go into society. So in a lot of ways, we just don't have our incentives right for the utilities to want solar. Because there's no question when you ask anybody whether they think solar is beneficial for the public, you've got enormous support. I'm already getting a lot of time. Okay, next one then. So there's 8 pieces to our solar freedom bill. I mentioned the cap on net metered solar. There's limits on third-party financing that we want to lift. If you are a school or a nonprofit, the best way for you to do solar is to have a developer build and own the solar facility, and you pay for the electricity. It is a private contract that the utilities treat as if you are selling power in their stead. And what we would like to do is say, no, that's a private contract. It's really not a sale of electricity the way utilities do it. So get the utilities out of it, get the state corporation commission out of it, and just let people do it. The third one, this is is really big for the local governments. You've got landfills, vacant lots, other places that you could be putting solar, but we have a number of problems right now. If you're putting it on a landfill, you don't have load on site, so you have to carry it elsewhere. That's not allowed. A landfill could take, say, 5 megawatts. You can have very large projects. We have 1 megawatt limits, so that's a problem. You can't have solar on one meter and attribute it to a different meter. That's a problem. So we've got a whole section that would allow Fairfax County and other counties to do this and save money for their residents. Apartment building owners, currently can't install solar and sell the output to tenants. And then we've got there's these other ones that I won't go into right now, but it's just a whole series of barriers, and the Solar Freedom Bill puts those all together and says, let's just tackle these all at once. Okay, next. This has gotten huge support. As I said, we've been talking to all kinds of people with a stake in it. We've got huge support from local government around the state, support from environmental and health groups, faith groups like FACS, solar companies, political action groups. Next. What we have run into is the Rubin Group negotiations, where the solar industry talking to the utilities have been trying to come up with their own solutions. And so, as I say, that's inherently, you're not going to get very far if you ask the utilities, what are you willing to give us? And so there is a bill that actually works with the rural electric cooperatives. Dominion apparently has been much more reluctant to give anything. I don't know why that would be. But the co-ops would actually like to come up with a solution for their members because they're member-owned. So there is a bill, and I think it's okay. The problem is that it's introducing the concept of demand charges. So even though they're going to allow more solar, they're also going to start charging money, not for the first few years, but then slowly thereafter. And that, the bet here is that storage solutions will become cheaper and more common, and that you can basically handle demand charges by storing your own energy, and that benefits the utility as well as the customer. So it's kind of a bet on technology. We haven't really we've seen some initial language. The bill's been filed, but I understand they're still working at it. So we'll see where that goes. There are a number of other bills that do things for solar, and I can't get into them because Meg has just flashed me the red sign. So please talk to your legislators. I do have bill numbers now. As I say, this happened. I didn't have it when I put these together, but the bills have been filed. HB 2329, Mark Keem is our delegate who is leading that. He has been fabulous. And SB 1456, which is Senator McClellan. She's down in the Richmond region, so she's carrying the Senate version. And so please talk to your legislators, ask them to support it, and that Rubin Group is not a substitute for solar freedom. Thank you.